Well, good morning. Thank you very much for joining me on this video. Today I want to revisit Form 127. We've looked at it before, but I think it's important to take another look at it, especially in the light of today's real estate climate. No surprise to you, the market has changed. From January through to, let's say, end of March, maybe early April, we were on a tear. The market was robust. Prices were going up. In fact, January, the average in NAG went up $100,000. But then things changed. The market stopped gaining that kind of momentum. Speculators dropped out of the market. Number of sales dropped, and prices started to slide. And prices, in fact, have slid significantly in the last couple of months. As a result, there's a lot of people in a lot of problems. People that bought unconditionally, but they had a house to sell, and they were sure their house would sell, but all of a sudden the house is not selling. Or maybe they went in with no condition on financing, but they really needed financing, and now the house they're buying underappraises. So they got a problem. And whenever somebody's in a really tough situation, they look for somebody to blame. I remember Brian Buffini saying one time that his wife put a sticker on the mirror in their bathroom that said, "You're looking at the problem." There's not very many people that can do that. Very, very few people look in the mirror and say, "I'm looking at the problem." They look for somebody to blame. And I'll tell you who they blame 9 times out of 10 is the real estate agent. And so it's important that we understand that and we take certain precautionary measures. Let me illustrate this, for example. I got a call the other day from a man who was somewhat upset because his daughter had purchased a house unconditionally, and now she had a house to sell and the house was not selling. She had an offer on it, and it was conditional on sale of property, but the backup property wasn't selling. So there were 3 properties in a chain. She was caught in the middle, and she didn't know what to do. The father said to me, the agent told her she had to go in unconditionally. That's the only way that they would entertain an offer. Well, I knew the agent that was involved, very upright, ethical, careful agent, wouldn't have done that. So I said to them, let me make some inquiries and I'll call you back. So I spoke to the agent, pulled the file, talked a little bit, and I found out, no, they actually went in with 3 conditions in the offer, presented the offer, and the seller said, listen, I will accept the offer if they will cross out those 3 conditions, and if they do that, I will reduce my price by $25,000. So the seller signed back the agreement, crossed out the conditions, and reduced the price by $25,000. When the agent went back to the buyer said, heck, I will go for it to save $25,000, sure, and accepted the offer, and it was now unconditionally. Fortunately, they had the paper trail to establish that, no, they hadn't said you had to go in unconditionally. In fact, they put in the conditions in there to protect the buyer, and the market changed, and the buyer was now in a jam. I want to tell you that, and it's going to sound a little bit like nailing the barn door shut after the horses are 3 miles down the road, but I want to revisit this Form 127. Form 127 talks about conditions in an offer and a buyer acknowledging in the offer that they are choosing not to insert certain conditions. And it says, the buyer hereby acknowledges with respect to the conditions that the buyer will not be including a condition in the buyer's offer on the above named property regarding financing, regarding sale of the buyer's property, involving inspection of the property, and involving in obtaining insurance for the building. Actually, insurance for the building isn't that big of a deal because under the requisition period, the lawyer is given until the requisition deadline date to examine title and make sure, among other things, that the principal building can be insured against fire. So that one's covered. But the other ones, often in this market, people cavalierly, when they're in competition, would go in without these conditions. And it's important, it's very important, that the realtor uses Form 127 to establish that he sat down with the buyer and he explained the perils that could arise if things went south. And these days, a lot of things are going south. Okay, so the second thing I want to talk about is the importance when you're writing an agreement of purchase and sale or when you're taking a listing that you be accurate. You know, when you're in a hot real estate market, prices are going up, the buyers and sellers want to get to the finish line. It doesn't matter too much what's in the agreement of purchase and sale or what's in the listing because they're going to buy anyway they want to buy. But when the market shifts and all of a sudden the buyers are looking for a way out, it's important that you're not the one that gave them a legal loophole to get out. Let me give you another example that happened in a week or so ago. We had a buyer who had a house to sell, but they didn't go in conditional on sale of property. They went in unconditionally, buying another property. Their property actually did sell, but when they went to get the appraisal on the one they were buying, it appraised under by $350,000. That was significant. But the other interesting thing was when they took a look at the listing, and this was a bungalow, by the way, when they took a look at the listing stated the square footage of the property, and it overstated it by 400 square feet. I mean, how do you do that when you just measure the width and the length and multiply? But they got it totally wrong. And because they got it totally wrong, it was obvious that there was some liability on the part of the seller. And so rather than the seller automatically causing them to forfeit their deposit or threatening to sue them for the loss of the difference in the price when he has to resell it, he just signed a mutual release and cut the check back to the buyer. Now, we were fortunate in that situation. The buyer was fortunate in that situation, but I wouldn't have wanted to have been the realtor who made that mistake, because the seller is now going to say, I just lost all this money, and I lost this money because of a clerical error or because of an error in calculations when he took the listing. And we can do the same thing with agreement of purchase and sale. We can forget something, we can overlook something, we can misstate something, and it's critically important that you don't do that. So take the time, if you're unsure about something, have somebody else, your broker, look over the agreement of purchase and sale and make sure that it's in proper form. And so if something does go wrong, we hope it doesn't, but if something does go wrong, it isn't a problem that you've created by the way you structured the agreement of purchase and sale or the way you're taking the listing. I hope that makes sense. It's critically important moving forward. I want to thank you very much for taking the time to watch this video, and I'll talk to you again next week.